I'm Pete Nowaski with Nowaski Suspension and Nowaski Extreme Performance, and I'm here today with Clint Hetchler, one of our longtime customers, and we're going to talk about this beautiful CVO motorcycle beside us here. And I want to remind you, if you like our video today, hit that subscribe button so you can see more great videos like this in the future. All right, Clint, I already introduced you, but you should introduce yourself.
I'm Clint Hetchler. What else do you want to know?
Well, Clint, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Just a little bit about yourself, just a little introduction.
I've been riding motorcycle for a long time. I found out about Pete through some friends and been coming to him for a long time. I run a business in the area that brings me through here, and
I do some business with you.
you do, yes. Pete reciprocates. We run business together.
Yeah,
So
yep.
makes for a nice relationship.
Yes, it does. So, Clint, you have been coming here for quite a few years. How many do you think now?
Probably about 10 to 12 years.
And you've had you have multiple bikes.
I do, yes.
And you have gotten more and gotten rid of some, I guess, over the years. How many bikes do you have right now?
I have 4 right now.
4 right now, and at least a couple of them are running Nowaski suspension, right?
2 of them are running Nowaski suspension, yes.
But I think we've worked on at least 3 of the 4 you currently have, right?
You have, yes.
Yeah, because you have that older panhead project,
I
right?
have a 50 panhead. Yep.
That's a little too old for me. I'm too young to know about all that panhead stuff, Clint.
I'm a little old for it too and young for it at the same time.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, we like to stick to the late model stuff, and I know you have a couple twin cams and M8, and yeah, so.
Nice collection of bikes.
Yeah, you do, yep.
Yep.
So Clint, we mentioned that you've had quite a few bikes, and you currently have multiple bikes, so you're definitely have some miles on different models and different suspension and that, so let's talk suspension. You've ridden stock suspension and I'm sure other brands and that, so let's just talk about that for a minute.
Well, when I first started looking at suspension, I rode this down to Arizona, and I ride pretty much straight through, a couple stops on the way for sleeping, and that's about it. So you put on some miles and realize that's where you really start to realize suspension's important. And so I tried a different brand, and was better, but it just wasn't quite what I was needing for a tired old body and my body.
Right?
And so I came to Pete and we talked about suspension with Pete, and we changed this over to the rears at first. Mm-hmm. And this is a heavier bike, so you're not going to get quite the performance out of a heavier bike and that you're going to notice greatly until you start to really ride it a long distance. And once I felt the rears, we went to the fronts too.
So, Clint, we're in Wisconsin here, and you go to Arizona. How many miles is that with the route that you take? I'm sure you do a little bit of a scenic route, right? Yep. You're not just pounding the highway the whole time.
Right.
So, how many miles is it one way when you do this trip, and how long do you take to do it?
I take 3 days. It's depending on the route I take, which like you say, I like to take 2-lane roads instead of the freeway, but you end up on the freeway, so you get a good mix.
Yep.
I take roughly about 1,900 to 2,000 miles, somewhere over 2,000 miles on one direction, and then I ride back in the spring.
You could almost be doing an iron butt there if you just made it 2 days instead of 3. Right?
Speaking of the iron butt, I've done over 1,000 in a day multiple times and never gotten a patch.
Oh, yeah. Well, you got to sign up if you're going to get it.
That's what I've learned.
Right. So yeah, so you're putting on all those miles. You're doing highway, you're doing 2-lane back roads, you're bebopping, doing some scenery and stuff. So I'm sure you get your share of different road conditions in that process.
I do. Sometimes you run into where it's gravel even because you don't know ahead of time you're taken away and all of a sudden the road's taken out and you have to go through loose gravel, rough, tight gravel, stuff like that.
And weather. I mean, you absolutely run into different weather conditions.
I start out, it might be 30 degrees back here.
You're crazy.
I get into 90 degrees and then I go back into New Mexico sometimes when I go that route and it's 24 degrees, which we've had that discussion.
Right. Yep.
So,
yeah.
And then you're back up into the 90s. So I get in a trip, I will go through the full gamut of what weather can do to you. Snow, rain, sleet,
Yep.
heat, everything.
Well, and then also when it's really cold out and you're all tensed up, those harsh roads feel even worse.
They do.
Right?
Yeah,
so
they do.
you want good suspension on there.
It's very important. It's
Yeah.
extremely important. And then I have health issues along the way that have required me to come up with good suspension.
Yeah.
That's why I turned to Pete.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, I'm sure your health is due to your age, right?
Yeah, well,
Not that I'm that far
you're
behind
not
yet.
that far behind me, Pete.
Right. So, Clint, I know that you have tried not only stock suspension, but at least 2 other brands of suspension you've had on your bikes. So, now you've had experience with, let's just say, at least 3 different brands of suspension, right? Including stock.
Yep.
And then when you put the Nowaski suspension on there, let's split this up kind of into 2 questions. Number 1 with the rear shocks and number 2 with the full setup there. Like, what was the things you noticed or how big of a difference was it when you actually got on this Nowaski suspension?
So when I got onto the Nowaski, I was able to put on extra few hundred miles in a day with the ability to get off the motorcycle and still walk into a restaurant and walk into the hotel carrying my stuff without being hunched over like an old man.
Yeah.
The other thing I really experience is the ability to handle and feel the road better. We've talked about that
Yeah.
suspension is really important to cornering, takeoff, going through traffic when you're hammering on the brakes because somebody pulls in front of you. You need to have every single thing lined up properly.
Yeah, you do. You definitely do. Yep. And when you're making that long journey across the country, you just don't know what kind of stuff you're going to run into. So you have to have that peak performance.
You do.
Yeah.
You need it. It's a demanding ride. It's in a certain amount of time, and you have to make it happen, and you have to feel good when you get done.
Yeah, because when you get there and you feel so bad you can't even enjoy your dinner,
Right.
it sucks, right?
Right,
I mean, you
yeah.
can do it, but there's better ways.
There's not a hot tub at every single stop.
Right. So, Clint, we've talked about your journeys across country, right? Your 1,900-mile journeys from Wisconsin to Arizona, and you reside in Wisconsin and you have an Arizona place. So you have motorcycles in both places. You're enjoying the experience of just riding around and sightseeing along with the distance travel. So you have 2 different conditions. One would be your bags are empty. You maybe have a jacket or this and that in there. But when you're traveling, you are loaded down. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. So you're loading that up to go across country. So with these different weights, how does that, talk about that. You know, how does the bike ride empty versus loaded or go into a little bit of depth on
So
that?
when you're taking a trip, you load up with things that you need, things you don't know you're going to need, things that are just required for the trip. You have to have different types of clothes. So the bike gets quite heavy in the process of going on a long distance trip. The ability with the shocks, Nowaski shocks that I have on there now, is the ability to adjust for that. So you can be unsafe and not be able to adjust for that. Where you get into a corner and you start to get that hop and stuff, and you're still doing the demanding things that a bike does and what you require on a trip, but you're carrying a lot more weight. Sometimes with a passenger, sometimes by yourself, and you're just loaded up. So with the shocks, it's really nice to have the ability to maintain that level of safety by adjusting out for what's going on.
So you make those adjustments. Like, it only takes you a minute to make those adjustments,
Very
right?
easy. Pete taught me how to do it. It's very easy.
Right? Just click that clicker on the bottom.
Yep, it's very simple. It's a nice ride too. It makes it feel like you aren't loaded when you are loaded in the shock department.
And that's important. You want your bike to feel the same regardless of the duty you're putting it through, right?
Yeah, it's not just getting there. It's enjoying the ride on the way, and there's no way to do it without having some flexibility with a good shock.
Right, because you're no matter what, the shock you can't set it up one way and have it work empty and loaded. It's just not possible.
It's not possible. It's not safe either.
Right. So there has to be some give and take, or you have to have the adjustment in order to maintain that quality of ride.
That's exactly right.
All right, Clint, I have one question for you, though. I mean, when you're going from Wisconsin to Arizona, do you ever take cheese curds with you?
Every time. I have people that demand it.
That is so awesome. Wisconsin cheese.
That's right. Wisconsin cheese is the best.
Yes, it is. So a lot of times when you are researching and looking or purchasing suspension, you put your time and effort into learning about it, and then you make a purchase, but you don't always get support or the support you need after that. So let's talk about that, Clint. Have I and my team been able to help you with that?
Most definitely. On a trip last year on my 19 CVO Street Glide, I brought the shocks down with me because I had ridden it down on the stock shocks. Got there, the shocks sucked, just to put it mildly.
Yeah.
They really did.
Yeah.
And so I was able to put them on at my property, and I was able to call Pete on his cell phone. Pete does care about his customers quite greatly.
Yes, I do.
And I was able to contact him, say, hey, Pete, how do I adjust this? He said, take them down there, put them on, have a problem, give me a call. I'll walk you through it. We did that, got on the bike, took it for a ride. I could actually feel the bike was faster.
Really?
Yes, I definitely could feel it faster. And I felt more comfortable and in control of the motorcycle than the shocks that were stock.
So you were probably just riding faster because you were more comfortable with the performance of it.
I think more power gets delivered to the rear wheel, too.
You're
and
right.
You're probably right on that, too, because confidence is what allows you to ride.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
It's
is.
a very important part of riding and a very important part of being able to cross the country, and I do it by myself.
Yeah. Yep. And I'd like to just take a minute to, I guess, expand on that. My name is on the brand, and I do care about my customers. I have been a part of this industry for more than 20 years, and I am very passionate about the industry and Harley-Davidson motorcycles and my suspension, and I want to make sure that everybody is satisfied with Nowoski suspension products. So I literally handle all of the setup and tech calls and all of that because it's important to me that I make sure that you are happy or whoever might be happy.
Pete really does want his customers to be very happy with the product. That's come through in many things that I've done with them too. It's not just through the shocks, it's through bike builds that we've done and stuff like that.
Awesome. So Clint, we touched on the fact that, again, you have shocks on multiple bikes, or our suspension on multiple bikes. So you put rear shocks on this first, you rode it for a period of time, and you were satisfied with that, and then you wanted to upgrade the front as well. And we get a question quite often, and that is putting the front cartridges in worth it? And I usually tell people, you want to start with the rear because your body is positioned towards the rear of the bike. But let's talk about the difference the front made.
Well, the front, we'll start with the rears. The rears soften the ride and make it, I don't really want to say soften it, but they make it more controllable and stuff like that. This is a very heavy bike, and then loaded up, it becomes even heavier. And with the front shocks on it, you don't get the dive down. It actually is a rate of decline, I guess is the right way to put it. It's a rate of decline that is controllable. You know, your handling comes from the front end of the bike, especially in an emergency situation, which you get into them quite often out there on the roadway. The front shocks matched up with the rear make the bike perfect.
And that front wheel is hitting the bump first.
Yes.
So a lot of our customers also, when they upgrade the rear, they almost immediately feel the deficiency in the front because now all of that that bump or the crack or the pothole is completely introduced through the front and not noticeable on the rear anymore. So all of a sudden you're like, what the heck, right?
You realize what you're fighting finally.
Yeah.
And you take the fight out of the bike and you can actually control it properly.
And enjoy your ride.
And enjoy your ride and feel better when you get there.
Yeah.
And in emergency avoidance, it's everything about the shocks. It really is.
Because you're not getting that extreme brake dive, right? Like that front end on stock suspension, you grab the brakes and it dives down and the bike kind of bucks up, right?
Well,
and it kind of gets weird.
It does. It gets squirrely up there. It also forces your body weight forward. If you decelerate like this, it's a lot more controllable. You take that little bit of fear out of your head that you have a front end that's not controllable, and it puts it back into your hands and you can control it.
In that, now that we said that, we should touch on that, right? The confidence of riding, because you get into maybe that situation where you need that front end to work, and now you're not worried about whether or not it's going to work, so you can react to the situation rather than the bike.
Yes.
Right?
You focus on the ride. You focus on the event that's happening is probably a good way to put it. Sometimes it's not even stopping. It's hitting that pothole and not being launched out of your seat, and you're fighting to keep control of your body. Instead, you're fighting to keep control of the motorcycle, but it's much easier. It's now that fight is pretty much gone.
Yeah. Yep. Awesome. I'm glad to hear that full system works out for you. So
Really does. It's the only way to go.
awesome.
So we're talking a little bit about how the bike changes when you put the shocks on it. Some situations I've been in. One was a huge pothole that I had to take on. There was traffic all around me. There was nothing I could do. I had to hit this pothole, and it was easily this deep. It was a little bit hair-raising, I can tell you that, but the bike responded and reacted properly through that. It didn't pitch me into the cars. It maintained the direction I was going. Part of that is because it took away that, how am I going to handle this? It took away the buck. It allowed me to drive the motorcycle through that situation. And that's common, but this was a big pothole. Another experience was 2 years ago. I'm coming back from Arizona. I got stuck in a haboo. It was 100-mile-an-hour winds with a sandstorm.
That's a haboo?
That's a haboo.
Okay.
It's probably one of the hardest things to drive through, you can drive through.
Really?
Yeah, snow's pretty simple once you do it.
Yeah, right?
It's just slippery.
Yeah, right?
A haboo has 100-mile-an-hour winds, so I'm driving down the freeway because I had to get on the freeway, and there are literally trucks with the trailers blown off of them on the side of the road, and I'm going past them, and I had to pass vehicles, semis going like this across the road, and I got, that was in the start of the haboo. Then I ended up in the actual full-fledged 100-mile-an-hour windstorm with sand and going through sand dunes. I didn't have to fight the bike. I had to fight the wind.
The haboo.
The haboo. The haboo was on me.
Right?
And I rode it through. I had friends follow me in a car because I knew I couldn't get over Vail with the trailer. I knew I couldn't get over Vail. And they actually took a video, and you could barely see me.
Yeah?
And I was driving through sand dunes and stuff that were blown onto the road.
Blown up on there?
Yes.
And it just...
Yeah, it actually, again, shocks are really important. You may not think they are until you actually put them on and actually ride, you know? But the shock allows you to drive the motorcycle and take away that softness that a stock shock does. Other competitors, their shocks are better. They're better at the moment until you ride on something that is actually performing for the motorcycle and performing for your body.
So you get what you pay for, right? Like you have a stock shock, you have an upgrade, and then you have like a high quality shock with all that adjustability, and you're saying it's worth it.
It's worth it.
Yeah.
It's worth every penny of it. I would never even think about riding without them now.
So I've said many times that suspension is one of the most underrated, underpriced components on a motorcycle. And by underpriced, I mean that there's over 100 precision parts that go into Nowaski shocks, into a pair of them. And that quality and precision isn't cheap and easy, right? So you can get a mediocre upgrade, but if you really want something quality, you got to spend a little bit more, but it's worth it and it lasts a long time. I mean, you've put a lot of miles on these shocks and they're still working great. You've never had any problems, right?
Never had a problem with them. The thing about a shock too, the shock just doesn't give you the ride. It gives you the confidence in the handlebars and the seat, but it also fixes your braking issues. You know, you may need a lot further to brake and your bike's diving and it's throwing off that rear brake where it's now all of a sudden that brake might slide in a lesser shock because the front end's diving forward and you're putting more force on the front shock, well then or the front brake tire, well then all of a sudden you hit a little soft patch because there's more force on it, it can actually bring you down.
Yeah, it'll wash out on you.
Yeah, and in your emergency situation when you're driving along, they come up, you know, minutely, hourly, whatever it is, depending on the traffic.
Right.
That ability to stop for it. I mean, there should really be a test on how much less braking happens because the bike sits at the proper level as it's stopping.
We should do that.
You should. Yeah.
Right on. So Clint, we talked about the fact that you've ridden multiple different suspensions and Nowaski suspension and front and rear and that. So if what would your 2 cents be to someone that was inquiring about Nowaski shocks or was on the fence about it? What's your 2 cents, Clint?
My 2 cents is Pete knows I hate to spend a lot of money unless it's the right money for the right product. Nowaski shocks are the way to start. I went through multiple different brands trying them, so I wasted a lot of money on them.
And you don't like to waste money, Clint.
I do not like to waste money. The good thing about these shocks, if you want to have that confidence and that level that you're going to come home because you're going to be able to handle situations that come up out there, these shocks are going to give that to you, and I would say just go right to them. Save yourself some, trying to save a buck. You're not saving, you're not getting what you should get.
Right, so you think you're saving money, but you're actually kind of wasting money because you're only getting half of what you really want.
Yeah, those shocks are for sale. Pete, I want to tell you a little story about riding through, it's Highway 12. I live on Highway 12 in Hudson, and I got on Highway 12 out in Idaho, and it's one of the best roads ever. There's a sign there that says 99 miles of curves, and I know it's a famous road. You know that it's you got to ride it sometime.
Yeah.
And I was riding with a buddy. He's the guy that told me I should work with Pete, and we get to the sign, and I'm looking at it, and I thought, well, this looks like my kind of road. And we take off. There's no intersecting roads. You're following a stream. And it's 99 miles of curves. And they say you should be a good rider to ride this road. It's one of the signs next to it, no beginners. And it's in the Nez Perce Nation. And by the time you get through it, you really do know how to ride your motorcycle. It's absolutely stunning. You have trees, you have water, we have stops. And you come into this little town called Kooskia.
Kooskia?
Kooskia. And you come in there and they have an anatomically correct elk sitting above a motel. And I call the number on the window of the office because there's nobody there. And they said, yeah, there's a room available for you. And you look underneath the mat and there's the key and it's $35 a night. I mean, when you're on a motorcycle ride, it's not about where you're staying or anything. It's about funness and enjoyability. When I woke up in the morning, town is beautiful, cute little town. When I woke up in the morning, my buddy was out cleaning his motorcycle, and I wake up and there's a freaking dog laying in my bed with me.
Yeah? Did he have to pay too?
No, he got it free.
He got it free on your dime.
Yeah, he was looking for a place to sleep.
That's awesome, Clint. That is awesome. Yep. And the whole time riding those 99 miles, you're feeling good.
I was feeling good. It was beautiful.
Awesome.
It was a great road.
Awesome. Yeah. Hey, there you go. Beartooth Pass?
Beartooth Pass is another one, but this was actually in Idaho.
Oh, I'm sorry, Idaho on Highway 12.
On Highway 12,
to
Kooskia. I actually met the founder of that town.
Really?
On a different trip last year.
Really?
In Moab.
In Moab, so not even in the town.
Not even in the town. It was his family that started the town. I went for a horseback ride and everything too.
Did he name it though?
His family acquired it. I think it's a Nez Perce name. And he actually delivered the sand that made the anatomically correct elk.
That's crazy. Awesome. That sounds like a lot of fun.
It was a blast. And, that's the beautiful thing about riding a bike. I roll into Moab 2 years, last fall. I roll into Moab and I'm out at one of my favorite places to stay. I walk outside, I'm getting on the bike. They say, "Did you ride that thing all the way from Wisconsin?" And they said, "How long did it take you?" And I said, "I'm on my second day." And I'm in Moab, and they're like, "Wow." And I said, "What would you do if you're in Moab and you just had a few hours?" And they said, "Well, you can go check out Horseshoe Curve or whatever, where the water turns, or you can come and ride horse with us. We have an extra horse." So I got up at 8 o'clock the next morning after putting on about a 700-mile ride the day before, drove out, found them in the middle of nowhere, and I got on a horse and went for a horseback ride and then jumped back on the bike and took off.
You like to ride horse, though, don't you?
I do, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't your first time.
It's not my first time. I've owned them for a long time.
Yep. Awesome. That sounds like a very...
They need some Nowaski shacks on horses.
Yeah, right? Hey, that's something maybe for the future. So, Clint, you have been a customer now for 10, 12 years or so, and, we talked about the fact that we've worked on a lot of your bikes, and we've done, multiple different things from custom wheels to, chrome parts and painted parts and different, yada, yada, whatever. Let's maybe talk about this rockin' CVO beside us here, and we just did some pretty cool stuff on the extreme performance side of our shop for your motorcycle. So, what do you think about that so far?
I think it's amazing. I rode this in the Habu, which is a sandstorm. So I brought it back to Pete. Before I brought it to Pete, I took it through the tail of the Dragon and came back and said it's not running the same as it used to. So it's got 70,000 miles on it plus.
Yeah.
And so I gave it to Pete. And Pete, I'm gonna let you talk about the motor because I don't know what the hell you did.
But you knew what you wanted.
I knew what I wanted. Yes.
And he wanted more power and more torque to make all of his riding more enjoyable, right? So that was a 110 CVO engine, and we built a few of those before. And Clint wanted not only more power and performance, but because you do so much riding and long distance riding, from the beginning, in all of our conversations, it was reliability, reliability, reliability. Yeah. So we not only wanted to maximize the performance, but the reliability. And you also said many times, I'm not gonna have to bring it back for anything, right? Like we wanna cover all the bases.
Right.
So this is one of your favorite bikes, and we went all in on it. We built this 110 engine here. Well, we tore it down to the crankshaft. We pulled the transmission out and the primary and everything, and sent that bottom end down to our friends at Dark Horse Crankworks. This has balanced, trued, welded flywheels, Timken main bearings, H-beam rods, CP pistons. We had our buddy Rick Ward at Ward Performance go through the heads and do his 110 head package, HPI throttle body on here. And not only did we do all of that engine work, but we went ahead and did a full R&D transmission in here. I mean, pretty much same thing as we have in our race bike. I mean, close. Yeah. Yep. So totally redone, went through the clutch and compensator, the whole 9 yards. We added this phenomenal D&D 2-in-1 exhaust system. We opted for the quiet baffle because you do so much touring, right?
Yep.
I mean, hours and hours and hours, we wanted to bring those decibels down. But man, we got it honking. I think, what'd I tell you, Clint, 127 horse out of that 110, right?
Yep, 127 horse.
Yeah.
The other thing we did when I talked a little bit about, because I ride so much in different temperatures, that I wanted it cooler.
Yes.
Without having a big gaudy
fan or cooler or whatever.
Right.
And I should mention it's already a liquid cooled heads on this bike in a CVO. So
how'd you take care of the cooling?
we put a Baker plus 1.5 quart oil pan on here. And I believe, if I remember correctly, that'll cut 16 degrees off of your temperature when you're cruising,
Yes.
right? When
Yep.
you're riding.
Plus you have more oil in there to help those long rides.
Yeah, more clean oil is always better.
Yep.
It's always better for that. So what else did you tell me, Clint, too? You said, not only do I want the performance and the reliability, but then you wanted gas mileage.
Gas mileage, fuel mileage is important.
Jiminy Christmas, Clint. Like, you want it all, you know? You want your cake, you want to eat it, you want the whole thing, right?
Right, and I want a fork to go with it.
Yeah. Well, so I personally dyno tuned this bike on my dyno, and I spent some time with Clint going over this, and we determined what your highway cruising speed and RPM would be. We determined, what air fuel ratio would give the maximum power, but then I tuned it in that cruising range for maximum fuel mileage. But not so lean that it would be hot. So
Right.
there's a balance here, and a lot of people don't realize that. They maybe come in and want a big number, but they're not thinking about all the stuff. You're a pretty smart guy. You think about it all.
Well, thank you.
And, you don't want to waste money, so
Right.
you wanted to make sure your bases were covered.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted was total reliability. When you're out there, which I ride solo by myself, on probably 80% of my riding is solo. I want to make sure that this bike, wherever I go, gets me through what I'm going through and brings me back home again.
Yeah. So we got it all. I mean, we have it dialed in, so you should have that cool running engine with the fuel mileage you want, but when you roll that throttle, it's going to give you the power you need too. So, and Clint, this might be worth talking about too. Like, we spent a lot of time talking about this, and here at Nowoski, we don't necessarily like cookie cutter builds, right? Like, it's like one size shoe doesn't fit everybody. And I always take the time to listen to guys like Clint and figure out what is it that they really want, because that piece of paper with that number, that only works when you're riding the bar stool.
Yeah, that works when you're sitting on the dyno, but when you're out in the real world, it's important to have it done right.
Yeah. So here at Nowoski, we can definitely help that. And with 20 years of experience building engines and dyno tuning bikes, we have the ability to meet all the needs of the customer. And I'm always glad to sit down and talk. Usually a phone call is best, right, Clint? I mean,
I can call him from Arizona, I can call him from anywhere and say, hey, Pete, what do you think of this? And he picks up the phone, he does, and he listens to me. And a lot of people don't take the time to hear you. They may listen to you, but they don't hear you. And they go about and do what they want to do.
yeah.
Pete's always listened to me, even if I'm not making sense.
Right? Sometimes I have to read between the lines, but I really do care about my customers, because
He does.
Clint, I'm in it for the long haul. I started this company when I was 26 or 27 years old, and I wanted to do it for the rest of my life. I love this. And it's more than just building the engine or getting the dyno sheet. It's the friendship and camaraderie that comes out of it, and like making you happy, because if I just gave you a big dyno number but not all the rest of it, well, a week from now you'd be calling and I'd be trying to do something different or fix it, and that's not good for anybody.
Not good for anyone. It doesn't bode well for the customers that you're looking to acquire also.
Yeah.
The other thing I can tell you is that Pete, in the course of all of this, Pete and I have become really good friends.
Yeah.
I consider him a very close friend. And
Same.
we call and we talk about other things besides bikes too.
Yeah. Yep. So that's another part of it, making sure the customer's happy and making friends in the process. And the cool thing about motorcycles is you can, if you're an enthusiast, you can strike up conversation with anybody, and it's fun to get to know people.
It really is. That's one of the beautiful things about a bike. You get on it, you go somewhere, you're immediately friends.
Yeah.
And you talk about things.
No matter what you ride,
No matter what you ride, doesn't matter. You can ride
whatever.
a moped.
Yeah.
You're still a big
That's getting close, Clint. No,
Yeah, I know.
But I get it. But yes, 2 wheels.
Yep.
Yep.
2 wheels is all where it's at. Thanks, Pete.
Yep. Thank you, Clint. Again, Pete Nowaski with Nowaski Suspension and Nowaski Extreme Performance, and my buddy Clint here, my longtime customer. So, hey, if you like this video, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can see more great videos from Nowaski Performance.